Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, whenever you are watching this video. Obviously, you are tuned in to another Suidlanders chat with me, Marius Greyling, and our head of Buitelandse Sake. Simon, what's that? Foreign Affairs. I'm word. Foreign Affairs. Simon Roche, that's in Russia at the moment. Hello and welcome, Simon.
Hello, Marius, and thanks for having me on the show again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, me and you have been doing this, I think it's over a year already. Started at Radio Groot Rivier and now going over into Suidlanders Media. And I I don't know what I will do on my Tuesdays or Thursdays now if I don't talk to you.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. I uh, I forgot, lost my train of thought. Sorry, everybody. I was just saying to Marius, I don't look bad in the camera, but I feel like I'm 800 years old. I've been run off my feet. You know, these Russians are such helpful people that sometimes you accept help that you don't really need or want. And my friend Raman uh, said to me, would I like to go to the White Sea? And I said, yeah. That would be great. It's about 40 kilometers from here. So we went to the Russian, well, not to the base, obviously, but to the Severodvinsk, which is where the famous Russian nuclear submarines and other naval fleet assets are are based. And I thought it was going to be cold, so I wore warm clothes and we went in his father-in-law's car, and Russians warm everything up. The other day, I'm coming to a point. The other day, I had washing done, and they brought it to me soaking wet. I'm in this kind of quasi-Soviet hotel, which is very charming, and the people are wonderful, and they just want to help. But they're a little bit mid 20th century about some of their things. So I get my washing back, soaking wet. But they brought me a drying rack. So I said, there's a little ante room. Two rooms share a bathroom and an ante room. So
Yeah.
you open a door and you in the ante room and you can use the bathroom, or you can enter each of the two rooms. So I set up that ante room. I set up the drying rack in the ante room, and I left open the door to the bathroom because it's so superheated that the heat dried my washing bone dry by about 3 o'clock in the morning. When I woke up, it was the first thing I went to do was to check. So the Russians like to turn up the heat, is my point. I have to sleep with all the windows and the doors open, otherwise I'd cook here. I would have come all the way from Africa to Russia to die of heat stroke. So we're on the way to Severodvinsk, to the White Sea. I'm dressed warmly, and Raman's father-in-law has got the windows up in the car and the heat on. Dear me. By about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it felt like it was 10 o'clock at night, like I'd had a long day in the office. Got back here and I went to set up two VPNs, or four VPNs. I'm becoming a techno philiac or whatever. And that took an hour and a half. Then missioning back here. By the time I got to the hotel, I thought, geez, I must look like I'm absolutely haggard. So it's been a bit of a rough day, but it's lovely to be on the show again, Marius. That's the gist of my story.
Okay, yeah. Um, I'm trying to picture on a map now where you are, and in this little sea area with where the fleet, well, some of their fleet is, and submarines and things like that. But Simon, interesting times when it comes to Ukraine, Russia, what's going on, and so forth. The so-called Pearl Harbor attack. with the drones. I think we spoke about it a bit last time. I haven't seen any retaliation yet from Russia's side. I've heard a lot of talks about it, but I haven't seen or heard. Maybe something has happened or not. Can you maybe enlighten us a bit of the situation?
Yeah, the long and the short of it is that in advance of the negotiations in Istanbul, the Ukrainians, but it's NATO. We've been through this, we've
Yeah.
discussed it. By this point, Alexander Mercouris, Alex Christoforou, John Mearsheimer, Gilbert Doctorow, Larry Wilkerson. Um, I'm trying to think of another three or four people by name. That is to say, mainstream Western, even American experts are acknowledging something that we've been trying to convey to our audience for a year now, namely that for Ukraine to execute any attack that is far away or involving Western sophisticated weapons, Scalp and Storm Shadow, HIMARS, ATACMS, F-16s, and any long distance drone attack requires NATO active participation, not merely support and encouragement, cheerleading, active participation, because Ukraine lacks the codes required, the special operational codes for those weapons. In other words, if you, Marius, uh, and your gang, Marius is 13, conducted a heist on an American military warehouse, and you managed to get away with a bunch of missiles, you wouldn't be able to use them at all unless you had certain codes that unlock them.
Mm.
And those codes are not given away. You just don't do it. It's like giving somebody your bank account number because you trust them. There's no such thing. Not your account number, your automatic teller machine
PIN code.
code.
Yeah.
PIN code, that's right. Personal identification number. And Ukraine lacks the satellite capability for target acquisition and reconnaissance, especially for pinpoint strikes. It's one thing to fire a howitzer in a direction. It's another thing to want to guarantee that you strike the very heart of the target at which you're aiming.
Mm.
So Ukraine, NATO conducted certain attacks. They attacked Russia's strategic bomber fleet and other planes that were located at the four air bases in question. And about 40 planes were either destroyed altogether or very seriously damaged to the point that they'll be out of action potentially for years. That was an enormous provocation in advance of the talks on Monday in Istanbul. The Russian nuclear doctrine was revised some time back to include, among other things, Russia's right to deem itself attacked by a nuclear power if any power attacks it with the aid of a nuclear power.
Mm.
So, in terms of Russia's policies and principles, it has been attacked by France, Britain, and the United States of America. Not only that, its nuclear forces were attacked. So very, very, very big thing altogether. On top of that, two trains were attacked, one by having a bridge collapse on top of it, a passenger train and another goods train. We don't know the details. There are no photographs. The area was sealed off, no access, but another goods train was attacked at that time too. So that's the background. Enormous provocation. I'll leap forward to what is the current status of things, and then we can fill in the blanks in the middle. Donald Trump phoned Vladimir Putin yesterday to say, nobody told me. I'm innocent.
Mm.
I'm just a little victim, which means one of two things. Either the White House is a circus and he's not the ringmaster, and very, very, very senior US military and intelligence personnel are conducting the gravest of grave adventures against Russia without informing him. Or he lied to Putin's face. And so the world awaits retribution from Russia. As yet, to address your question or the point you made saying that you hadn't yet seen anything in terms of retaliation, I'm not sure that we will ever necessarily know for sure, or not in the foreseeable future, if there was retaliation. I'm firmly convinced that the Francis Scott Key Bridge collision,
Mm.
where the freight ship in Delaware drove into the bridge,
Yeah.
was a uh, 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 there was malice aforethought, to use the right English expression. In other words, it was premeditated by a party. It wasn't accidental.
Yeah.
And I think that that is indicative of the sort of action that Russia might take to send a very, very clear message to those who really count, rather than to do something that titillates you and me, Marius. I don't think that they're going to use an Oreshnik missile. I don't think that they're going to use a tactical nuke. I think that they may, excuse me, I've got a little mosquito bite. I don't think that they will, as I was saying, use a tactical missile. I beg your pardon, a mini nuke or something like that, as people are speculating all across the interwebs. I have no idea what they'll do, but I think that they may just do something that goes right over your and my heads, but which in the right circles is recognized as very, very, very potent.
Mm.
It could be something to do with the dollar. It could be something done through a proxy. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a shutdown of an electricity grid. I remind you that the former CIA agent, who is incidentally, it's neither here nor there, daughter-in-law to RFK Jr.,
Mm.
Amaryllis Fox, revealed in an interview on Tucker Carlson a few months ago that in 2014, it, in the span of about 3 days, North Korea did 3 exercises or rehearsals of attacks on the United States of America. The one entailed ninja-like figures, quite literally, clad in black, leaping over fences, cutting their way through doors, using special chemicals to burn holes through metal, etc., etc., on a major power grid nexus in California, near, I want to say, San Jose. The following night, I believe, they sent a satellite in an arc over the eastern United States, which the CIA calculated could only have been a rehearsal of an electromagnetic pulse attack from a satellite, knocking out strategic electronic and electrical circuits across the eastern seaboard of the United States, most notably in New York City and Washington, D.C. 2 weeks later, after a ship's had been abandoned in a harbor, I think in California, but it might have been in Oregon. The port captain of the port in question sent a team of guys down to knock on the ship and say, hey, what's going on? You were only meant to be here for 5 days. You've been here for 2 weeks now. What's cooking? Firstly, you have to leave. And secondly, you owe us 2 weeks worth of port fees at astronomical sums, $50,000 a day or whatever it is. They discovered that the ship was abandoned. And upon closer inspection, they discovered that mock-ups of missiles were in the hold of the ship. So what the North Koreans had successfully done, and they worked out it was North Korea. Anybody can go and watch the interview. Just Google search on YouTube, Amaryllis Fox on Tucker Carlson. What they'd done in the span of 3 days was those 3 unbelievable exercises. Staggering. These are the sorts of things that can be done by one state against another in the days in which we live, Marius. So time will tell. You never know. There have been some heavy strikes on Kharkiv and Odessa in recent days. The Ukraine leaks, the videos are coming out. So, that may continue, but I don't think that's sort of abnormal. I don't think it's commensurate to destroying 40 planes. Well, not all of the planes were strategic bombers. There were at least 7 Tupolev 95s that were wrecked, properly wrecked. And there were some Tupolev 22 M3s. Many of the other planes were, I almost want to say, auxiliary aircraft. Nevertheless, to destroy 10 or 12 or 13 between the Medvedevs, the 95s, and the 22s is very, very, very meaningful. So I don't think that anything that we've seen over the past few nights is commensurate to that. I think there's still something coming, either something absolutely spectacular that we do get to witness, or something very dark and mysterious that we only find out about in 18 months' time, if not in 40 years' time, when some archived, classified file is declassified in some or other, Russian or American archive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to a guy on his own podcast or whatever, and this was just his opinion. And he said if he's a betting man, he's gonna put money on that Putin will, for instance, take out Ukraine's total power grid and let them suffer with that, and let them turn on each other, and let there be anarchy without power. He said he will do something strategic like that and not just go for airfields or military targets or whatever. But that was just his personal opinion. There's no founded evidence of that might be happening. But it was quite interesting to hear him say that that is the way Putin will be thinking most probably, and not just, like I said, airfields or military bases, what everybody is expecting or whatever. Yeah. But I was thinking of myself, imagine now in South Africa, what will happen if our power grid had to go, boom, it's gone. I mean, we all know,
Oh,
we all know what will happen in South Africa. It will be 3 days, and then it will be riots and chaos. Maybe not even 3 days. I don't know how the situation will be in Ukraine if they have to lose their power grid, if it will be a complete anarchy like it will be in South Africa. But it
mm,
wouldn't surprise me if it would be something strategic like that, or like you say, a very secretive thing that we only find out about maybe years later. That, oh, that was Russia that did that.
mm. Yeah, I think I disagree with that guy, and I'm not disagreeing on the basis of anything except what we've seen of Vladimir Putin's approach thus far, which has been very much to stay on the right side of the moral, barrier. I don't know. Um, I don't think that he would do something that the Western media could use to expose him, as it were,
Mm.
for a heartless thug. The Western media would be very quick to jump on the story if 16 orphans on heart lung machines,
Oh
he
yeah.
was an orphan whose mother died of AIDS, and he was also a cripple, and he was an immigrant, and he was gay, and he was on a heart lung machine, and he died because of Vladimir Putin. Um, I think he would steer clear of knocking out all of Ukraine's grid. But Marius, I don't know any better than that guy does. I'm not being
Yeah.
argumentative. Time will tell. Nobody really knows. I'm just
Yeah.
shooting the breeze with you.
I think you've summed it up correctly, because we've seen in the last 2 years that Putin has showed a lot of restraint, more
Mm,
than we've all thought that he had in him. I thought by this
mhm,
time he would have gone, you know what, bugger all of you, I'll show you.
mm,
And he hasn't. So I think your assessment is actually quite spot on, that he won't give the West that stick to beat him with in their own media circles, to say that, yeah, you see, you have caused this type of deaths or whatever now because you've taken out all the power. So I kind of agree with you, Simon. That hasn't been in his playbook so far. So interesting.
Yeah, I think that what is worth mentioning in this context is that uh, there are major pushes on the front lines, huge pushes. We know that up until about 10 days ago, there were 150,000 troops.
Hmm.
This is a war that Russia went into with somewhere between 90 and 150,000 frontline infantry combat personnel against over 600,000. This is now well established. There was a time when it was debated and disputed, and people said, no, that's not true. Russia sent 55 million men or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, Now it's not disputed any longer. Nonsense has been made of those ridiculous claims. The Russians did enter the conflict with an undersized force. They've bolstered that force over time. No two ways about it. But for them to suddenly be revealed, as was the case about roughly 3 weeks to a month ago, to have 150,000 troops waiting in the wings to surge to the front lines was a tremendous thing. And it seems as if some of those 150,000 troops have been fed into the front lines in recent days. because there are big surges all across the front lines and there are big collapses. Um, in one location, 10 kilometers was lost in the span of 24 or 36 hours. 10 kilometers directionally speaking, not area wise, not 10 square kilometers, 10 kilometers in one direction where the
Yeah.
Ukrainians fell back that far. So we're not talking about revenge attacks now. We've moved on a little bit in the conversation, but it does reside, this topic, within the broader theme of
Yeah.
big Russian initiatives, whether they be for the sake of retribution or just for the sake of prosecuting the war, which means that we could see, as the Russians warned the Ukrainians, when the Ukrainians rejected Russian demands on the 16th of May pertaining to the four oblasts and Crimea, so Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson,
Mm.
when they rejected them out of hand, the leader of the Russian delegation, I can't think of his name for a second, said next time it'll be five. And when he was asked about it the following day, he said, no, no, somebody misheard. We said next time it will be eight. So who knows, Marius? We could be in for a summer, a Northern Hemisphere summer of action aplenty. If the Ukrainian lines do collapse and we do see some sort of a battlefield rout, and Russia does get, say, as far as the Dnieper River, which divides, roughly speaking, the eastern third of Ukraine from the western and central two-thirds, roughly.
Yeah.
It'll be game over. And if NATO does want to extend this conflict, if the West does, as I've been claiming for 2 years now, need this conflict for eschatological reasons, that it's part of as ridiculous as it might sound to some people, it doesn't sound ridiculous to those who believe in this sort of thing, not necessarily me, or not me at all. If it is part of a pedophiliac, satanic death cult cabal end times plot, then they're going to have to very rapidly come up with an enormous false flag event to warrant the United States and the Europeans getting involved so that the war can be continued.
Yeah.
And we know that the United States' involvement in large wars is always based on a false flag event. The Spanish-American War in the Philippines began with the attack on the Maine. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. The Lusitania was used as the pretext for the USA's entry into World War I. Pearl Harbor, World War II, and they knew that it was coming. We know that now. Korean War, I don't know, I can't say. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was a false flag event perpetrated by the USA, an absolute fiction
Yeah.
that precipitated or justified the USA's entry into Vietnam. Then weapons of then the invasion of Kuwait for Operation Desert Storm. Later on, it turned out that the reason why Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait was because, I forget the name of the oil basin, if that's the correct word. I know nothing about geology. That Iraq and Kuwait shared an oil field or oil pond or oil swimming pool, call it whatever is the right name or whatever name you like, that sat athwart their border, or the border sat athwart this oil well thing. Um, excuse me, somebody's trying to get hold of me, and I did tell them that I'll be in an interview. And the Kuwaitis had been drilling skew to steal Iraqi oil that came out
Yeah.
25 years later. Then, of course, the Israeli art students, the E team, and the Twin Towers,
Yeah.
and weapons of mass destruction. So there's no reason to believe that they're going to come up with a different approach. It's kind of their modus operandi. It is the standard way. And if it doesn't happen, well, then the whole world can say to me, Simon Roche, you're a bullduster and you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm.
Um, I'm sticking my neck out a long way here, but I think that the evidence of NATO's involvement and the evidence of NATO's agitation, not merely involvement, agitation,
Yeah.
is by now so overwhelming that I think we're on fairly solid ground with this one, Marius. I think that the Russians, it appears, are making such great headway that if NATO doesn't want them to call it a day
Mm.
before they get involved, then they're going to have to come up with something very big. And as somebody said this morning, the USA smuggled so many suitcase nukes onto Russian soil during the Cold War when it was the Soviet Union, but now, of course, we're talking about Russia, that they could instigate a false flag attack at any one of 100 locations.
Yeah.
So let's see. Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows, Maurice? I don't know. We're coming to the end of our time.
Yeah, we've got about 2 to 3 minutes left. So if you just want to, I don't know, say something else to end it off before we greet, then you can go
No,
ahead. But yeah,
no.
thanks, Simon, once again. Yeah, no, I was wondering and pondering about this thing. Maybe because you are in Russia, maybe you saw something that I didn't see. Because I was specifically looking for some kind of retaliation attack, and that's why I wanted to pick your brain about it in this interview specifically. But yeah, thanks
Mm,
once
mm.
again. Wonderful chatting to you like always, and we'll do it soon again.
Super duper, Marius. Yeah, see you. Thanks. Thanks. Cheers, Marius. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.